Hey, this isn't going to really have a major theme. I just got a few days off work. I've been at work for a couple months. I think I'm only going to get a few days off, but something interesting. Got back and I had some mail waiting for me, and some of you might find it interesting, so I thought I'd show it to you. Got some books from the Mises Institute. I had just finished Man, Economy, and State, and the next day they came out with a new 1,000-page book of Rothbard essays. Pretty reasonably priced. I think it was $18. So since I just got paid, uh, New Deal in Old Rome. I had heard about this book a couple years ago. Basically, it's an Austrian. It's a piece of what Austrians would call not economics but economic history, an application of Austrian economics to history to Rome. Um, and since there seem to be so many parallels between the United States and Rome, uh, it seems pretty interesting. So that, and then probably the premier economic historian in the world today is probably Robert Higgs, at least in my opinion. And I think this is his second book, Depression, War, and Cold War. Basically, how uh, the government spending during the Depression and World War II did not end the Depression. That's one of the biggest myths in the political science slash economic mentality of the United States, at least, and I think also in many of the Allied countries, that uh, the government spending, especially during World War II, and some people would say even during the Depression, ended the Depression. And of course, that's ridiculous. But here's a book on why. And another one of his books, Crisis in Leviathan. Uh, I think this might be his more famous book. This one is about how government grows during crises. And I've known about these books for years. Robert Higgs is he's kind of modest. He'll actually say he's not an economist, but he knows. I mean, he understands economics as well as any tenured doctorate or professor in that area. He calls himself an economic historian. He goes through and spends a lot of time analyzing historic events. Uh, and if you never heard of him, go look up all his lectures. He's been interviewed by Scott Horton on Anti-War Radio probably at least half a dozen times. He's been on C-SPAN. He's definitely worth a look. And then also, I got this, the Bastiat collection. Now, I'm assuming that it's not complete because it doesn't say complete. It's just a collection, but it's pretty thick. Bastiat is really famous, but if you think about, at least for me, his fame is disproportionately large compared to how much stuff I've read of his. I've read Law, and when you read Economics in One Lessons by Henry Hazlitt, that is basically a knockoff that he acknowledges, but that's basically from Bastiat because he's I don't know if he's actually the one, but he's often credited with the broken window fallacy. But so I figured it was high time to learn a little bit more. It's a pretty small book. And then wasn't only books that I bought. Some silver. I've been buying silver for years, so this is uh, just 10 ounces here. But the main thing I got was this baby. 1 ounce gold coin. Krugerrand. Paul Kruger. Been buying silver for 6 years now, I guess, and I'm not a silver or gold bug. Um, I guess I've heard pretty convincing arguments either way. I do think actually silver is undervalued, at least relative to gold, but that doesn't really matter because per unit of weight, gold is just way more valuable than silver. So Uh, I've been reluctant to get into gold because I have this thing where I don't want to get a really small amount. I mean, you don't need a lot of money to get in gold. You can buy a milligram if you want. But I didn't want to buy a milligram for $10. I wanted to get a pretty substantial coin. So I got a 1-ounce Krugerrand. These are supposedly the first 1-ounce gold coins that were really minted by government. This is from 1978. It has an ounce of gold in it. It's not pure gold because there's a little copper in there too, but if you take out the copper, you still got an ounce of gold. And the reason it has copper is because it's actually meant to circulate. So you've got the Springbok on the back, and then Paul Kruger on the front. Interesting story. When I bought this, I bought all this online because I wasn't sure where I'd even be able to get a 1-ounce gold coin. I know places I can buy silver, but you can't usually just walk in them and demand a certain type of coin. Anyway, when I bought it, I got a phone call from the agency that sold it, informing me that pursuant of the Gold Confiscation Act of 1933, the federal government can take this at any time. At which I told him if they wanted my gold, they'd probably have to settle for a face full of lead, which he got a good chuckle out of. So, anyway, thought something would be interested. I wish every time I came home from work I could have these, have all this nice stuff waiting for me. See, these are just generic. I don't usually go, not usually willing to pay premiums. You can get really nice silver coins, but it's not worth an extra 10% or whatever. If you notice the size difference, but they're both an ounce. I mean, I don't know if they actually weigh the same. They certainly feel like they weigh the same. So, all right, well, that's it.